I'll never forget it. My mom and I are sitting at home. So this happened the night before Thanksgiving. And so the week before February 1st, my chairman came to my house and said, if you don't come back to work by February 1st, you're going to have to be set back an entire year by the AAOS, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, not by him.
Right.
You just can't miss so much time. So I started thinking, the wheels started turning. I'm going to have to find another fellowship, because you find your fellowship 2 years before. And I didn't want to go through another year of residency. So I got to work in a walker and used the walker to see patients in clinic, and they were very accommodating to my needs. And then I went to crutches and then a cane, and I did 6 months of rehab, but I finished on time. So I missed 2 months of work.
Oh, that's amazing.
Even though I was in the hospital for 3 of those 3 weeks.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. We're recording remotely today in Covington, Louisiana at AVALA Hospital. And our guest today is Dr. Shamieh, a minimally invasive spine surgeon and medical director here at AVALA Health. Doc, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, this is exciting. I've been watching your growth over the years, and I've got to say I've never seen anything like it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you came and did a presentation. B1 Bank is a title sponsor of our podcast, and you came and made a presentation to the board of directors about AVALA, your business, years ago. And I knew by reputation that you were a brilliant surgeon.
Thank you.
What took me by surprise in that presentation was your entrepreneurial energy and your branding, how good your branding was. And you did this fantastic presentation, and I was blown away.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that means a lot because, being a surgeon is a great passion of mine, but the marketing and the passion for entrepreneurship is really what drives me, and I definitely get that from my dad.
Yeah. Well, it's just been incredible to see, and so let's dig into it. Right? Why don't we start by you telling us about AVALA Today?
Sure. AVALA is a hospital system that has 21 inpatient beds. We also have imaging, physical therapy. We have 4 robots that help us perform surgical procedures. And so we do a number of procedures, including orthopedics, total hips, total knee replacements, spine surgery, pain procedures, bariatric procedures, eye procedures, plastic surgery. We have a wide gamut of what we do.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
So we're going to dig into how you ended up with a hospital, but there's you have other locations as well, right?
Right. We have clinics in Hammond, Louisiana, clinic in Covington that's branded as AVALA Ortho. So we have a physician network of employed physicians that work with us. Some of those are AVALA Pain, some are general surgery, orthopedics, and we're looking to expand that rapidly.
Yeah, it's amazing. And kind of the benefit of having multiple offices is it opens you up to a greater population of patients, right?
Right. So my dad is a neurologist in Lake Charles, and the old way of doing things was to set up shop in one location and everybody would come to you. But now, especially with the advent of COVID in this era, we try to make it as convenient for patients as possible and have a lot of satellite locations. In my practice, which is DISC of Louisiana, we're actually looking to merge the two entities, and DISC of Louisiana will eventually become AVALA Spine. We have lots of locations throughout the southeast Louisiana region, all around Lake Pontchartrain. So we have locations in Hammond, Covington, Slidell, Metairie, Houma. So we're branching out very quickly.
So let's back up a little bit and
Sure.
try to figure out how you did this. So I was talking with your mother one day, and she told me this story about you as a child, and you would come to visit your father at his practice or maybe at the hospital, and he had a child-size lab coat for you.
Yeah, my grandmother embroidered Dr. Shamieh, so I really didn't have much of a choice. I remember following him around the hospital floors, and the nurses would all say, "Oh, how cute," and I'd be just kind of following him in my white coat, seeing what he does. And to be honest, I never really wanted to do anything else except maybe play soccer. But, once those opportunities passed, I really focused in on becoming a physician, and then some life experiences then led me down this path.
Yeah. So you did your undergraduate at LSU?
I did it at LSU, and I played for the number one nationally ranked Tigers tennis team. So that was a great experience.
I tell you, I got great respect for any athlete that can play D1 sports. So
I have a much greater respect for how they balance the studying and passing classes and doing the work, because it's a lot of work. It's a job,
yeah,
for sure.
So, and your undergraduate was in
biology.
Biology.
And I hurt my knee. I tore my ACL in 99 or 2000, and kind of put an end to my playing career. But then I was operated on by a fantastic world-renowned surgeon in Lake Charles, David Drez, and that got me down the path of orthopedics.
I see. And so then you went to medical school in Shreveport? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Stayed there for 4 years of medical schooling, and then I stayed there to do orthopedic residency for 5 years, so a total of 9 years in Shreveport.
Wow. And so at that point, you're a surgeon. You're trained to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Right, and you take care of all the musculoskeletal ailments. I was treating shoulders and knees and things like that in residency, but I really wanted to focus on the spine. So I did a 1-year fellowship in minimally invasive spine surgery in Scottsdale, Arizona. There were a lot of things why I chose that. I mean, number one, I really wanted a mentor, and my two directors were phenomenal, Paul Gauze and Ed Doring. They were great mentors to me as to how to run a business, how to run a practice.
Really?
And then how to do minimally invasive techniques. And I also trained with orthopedic surgeons and with neurosurgeons. It was really important for me to do that because it's a little bit of different techniques and philosophy about the spine. So I like to learn as much as I can before forming my own opinion.
So in those 17 years of education, you had an incident, you had an accident, a serious accident along the way. Tell us about that.
So when I was an orthopedic chief in Shreveport, meaning I was almost on my way out, I I was going to the Saints-Cowboys game in 2010, and a drunk driver hit me while I was walking. He was driving an Escalade, and I flew about 10 or 15 yards, and then he ran over me with the Escalade, with the tires.
Holy cow.
So I think if he was 3 inches, to the right, I would have been dead. And of course, I'm a big guy, so that helped as well. And so I spent 3 weeks in the hospital, 2 weeks in the ICU. I had a skull fracture, nose fracture, separated shoulder, 15 broken ribs in the front and the back. So every time my lungs would expand, it's called a flailed chest. So very, very painful. That was the most painful part, were the rib fractures. If anybody's had a rib fracture, they know that's very painful. Yeah. I had a fractured dislocation of my hip where the ball came out of the socket like Bo Jackson had, except his wasn't fractured. Multiple wounds and multiple fractures of the spine. So,
you must have been close to not making it.
Very close. And my heart was bruised quite badly, so it was throwing different rhythms. So they kept me in the ICU. I had 4 surgeries on my hip, and it was an experience to be on pain medicine for 2 weeks. The IV medicine. Yeah. There's a lot of side effects with that. I started hallucinating and seeing stuff on the ceiling. Those are things to just keep me, as little pain as possible, but there's no way to completely control it.
Right.
But from that experience, I knew what I wanted to do in my career. My surgeon was top-notch. He literally saved my career, saved my life. Camby's Shardar in Shreveport. He's an amazing human being. And I knew I got transferred from Dallas to Shreveport for him.
Wow.
Because I knew that he was a meticulous surgeon and he was going to do exactly what needed to be done with my hip. And he saved my hip. It's a very technically difficult surgery. And he did it and saved the blood supply to my hip. Otherwise, I would have needed a total hip replacement. And at a young age, and as big as I am, it would have definitely worn out 20 years after the surgery. I would have needed another surgery. So, he really put me on the right track. So I did have some poor experiences with the hospital systems and the care. And so, I was dealing with bigger hospital systems. So I knew right off the bat that I wanted to be able to control healthcare from the beginning of when a patient walked into my office or first heard about us and me to the end result, to where they don't need us anymore and they're out there telling their friends and family about us, and you have to go see these doctors.
How far did that accident set you back in your career?
So I'll never forget it. My mom and I are sitting at home. So this happened the night before Thanksgiving. And so the week before February 1st, my chairman came to my house and said, if you don't come back to work by February 1st, you're going to have to be set back an entire year by the AAOS, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, not by him.
Right.
You just can't miss so much time. So I started thinking, the wheels started turning. I'm going to have to find another fellowship, because you find your fellowship 2 years before. And I didn't want to go through another year of residency. So I got to work in a walker and used the walker to see patients in clinic, and they were very accommodating to my needs. And then I went to crutches and then a cane, and I did 6 months of rehab, but I finished on time. So I missed 2 months of work.
Oh, that's amazing.
Even though I was in the hospital for 3 of those 3 weeks. So I was very lucky that my rehab went great. I had amazing therapists, and Adam Brewer was my therapist in Shreveport. He was a phenomenal physical therapist.
That's a chilling story, but particularly when you consider, there's so much going on with that story, but when you consider the impact that it had on what you do today.
Yeah, it's a very positive impact, in total. It was obviously tough to go through.
Yeah.
but end result is going to be great.
So, and then you ended up going through and doing your fellowship in Arizona with the minimally invasive surgery procedures, and then you're off to start your practice after that. Is that right? Do I have the timeline right on that?
Yeah, started my practice in 2012. I was always planning on going back to Lake Charles. And
Doc, this is just too much to fathom. I mean, you're talking about being in business for 10 years.
Right.
And we're sitting in an extremely impressive hospital.
Thank you.
It's and there's so much there. So it's just unbelievable.
Thank you.
It's
I appreciate it.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Disc of Louisiana is your practice.
That's
that
right.
You
So
started.
we started in 2012, and it was just me at that time, and I practiced spine surgery on the North Shore for about 2 years. So I got my first partner, Dr. Jeremy James. You know, we were in each other's weddings. I know him very well. He did the same fellowship that I did, and he trained in Shreveport like I did. So I knew him very well, and we meshed well together. But when I got here, nobody was doing minimally invasive surgery on the North Shore. And that I learned in my fellowship in Scottsdale how to brand, how to market, how to separate myself, to build a niche for myself that no one else had, because it was so competitive there. They said it was a sunshine tax because so many spine surgeons were there, and we would get multiple opinions. I mean, patients would come to us for third and fourth opinions, and they would say, "This is the surgery I need, doc. What, are you going to do it for me, and why should you do it?" So you basically have to sell yourself over there, why that surgery should be done by you. So I got that sense while I was there, and they actually asked me to stay there to practice, but I just love Louisiana, so I came back, and I brought that same kind of spirit here.
And in that practice, you're doing a number of procedures, including replacing disc, right?
Right. So what happens in the spine is typically nerves get compressed by structures, either a disc herniation or if you have instability where the bones are slipping. And so there's a number of ways to treat that. One of the ways is to take the pressure off of the nerve root. It's called a decompression. Some people refer to it like a microdiscectomy or a laminectomy. There's also procedures that we perform called total disc replacements in the neck that we do, where we remove the entire disc, and in order to replace the disc, you put two pieces of metal and a piece of plastic in between that allows your bones to continue to move. So restoring as much movement as possible is better typically in most scenarios. So we try our best to restore the human anatomy as much as we can. We also do fusions, which a famous person is Tiger Woods, had a lumbar fusion or a low back fusion, and he came back to win the Masters after that fusion. So sometimes fusions, get a bad reputation, kind of like a four-letter word, but they're very useful, and they're very successful in most situations. Peyton Manning had a fusion of his neck in one of the discs, and he won the Super Bowl after that fusion.
Yeah, you think of it as a loss of range of motion, right?
Right. It is at that local level, in between those two bones, you do lose motion. But you have so many other factors that attribute, that help you have a full range of motion that you're still able to function very well.
So you're doing cervical, you're doing the entire spine.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And when you consider before, is it discectomy? Mm-hmm. Before that, procedure was available. You may have been limited to fusion.
Well, the real advancement that we've brought is the typical way of doing these surgeries is by making a big incision, cutting away all the muscle. The surgeon visualizes the spine, does a bunch of work, and then closes you up. The bad things about that is you have a much higher chance of infection, much higher chance of blood transfusion. All that muscle is dead because you burn it and you leave it open for so long. When we do minimally invasive surgery, you make a small incision, typically 1 inch or less than 1 inch, and you dilate the muscles and you get to the spine without disrupting all those tissues. You do the same work, but then you just kind of like slip out in the middle of the night, to make sure that you don't disrupt those tissues.
That is amazing. Okay, so let's talk about how you went from your practice when you started to AVALA and this hospital.
Sure. We were practicing at the local hospitals, and we just started to notice that patients would come back in clinic, and we'd do this amazing surgery, and they would get an amazing result, but they were always complaining about the hospital system. The food wasn't good. They had to wait a long time. The nurses weren't attentive. It was ugly surroundings. So I started to realize that the patients weren't complaining about the surgery. And when I would ask them about the surgery, hey, how did it go? They would say, oh, it's amazing. I don't have any pain. But then they'd be complaining about all these other ancillary things. And I said, that coupled with my past experience as a patient really led me down this path of being involved from the beginning to the end. And that included hospital ownership, to where the physicians have a say. And to be honest with you, I found that there was a lot of administrative burden at the other facilities, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. I would say, hey, we need this piece of equipment, or we need to cut our costs by using this or that. Any type of advice that we had, it was falling on deaf ears. So that's when we got involved. It was originally called Fairway Medical Center. It's a physician-owned hospital. It wasn't doing very well. It had 33 owners. Sometimes physicians, we kind of have infighting, and sometimes we have egos and things like that. And there are other things that come into play, and it just wasn't doing well. So when we came in, we actually had a partner as a big hospital system, and we went down to 5 owners. And the thing that I had to tell myself is, this is a huge risk. Now we can look back and say, wow, it's working, but it's a huge risk for physicians to take on. We don't like a lot of risk. That's partly why we do what we do. We minimize risk. So the thing I had to really ask myself is, if everything else failed and just my partner and myself were at the hospital, is this going to work? And we figured out that, yes, just with us and just with the spines that we did, if everything else failed, we could kind of cut back staff and cut back costs, and we'd break even. So that's how we thought of it. But as soon as we got it turned around, we made some administrative moves very quickly. We cut our costs, and we started doing more procedures here, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Yeah. First, we had to stabilize the situation, become profitable, and then we reinvested that money back into the brand. And we kind of rebranded after that. We invested $10 million in the hospital. We bought 3 Mako Stryker robots, and we have 1 spine robot as well. So we invested a ton of money back into the facility, and we just went from there.
Yeah, that's just such a huge gap from having a practice to buying a hospital. And,
seeing patients is my least stressful part of my day. The practice is one thing, but running Disc of Louisiana, I have 3 partners now, Dr. Justin Owen and Dr. Sean Michael Ryder as well. Dr. Owen is a neurosurgeon, so we're a multidisciplinary group, and Dr. Ryder is an orthopedic surgeon as well. So, making sure that they're happy, making sure that my patients are happy, and then making sure that the hospital's running well and the hospital is happy. is a full-time job. Those are all full-time jobs.
Well, look, we're incredibly grateful for having the time to sit down and talk with you as much as you've got going on.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, let's get in a quick word from our sponsor here. Take a break, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. And we are back with Dr. Shamieh. So you're in the hospital now, and you're having to resuscitate it, right? Get it back to life, invest money and get it going. And that seems to go well. And then you have this continued expansion of everything. Can you just walk us through what are the steps and how you expanded your business after you got in this building?
So, I had a vision 5 years ago that I definitely wanted to turn it around. I wanted engagement. I thought it was very important to distribute to our owners quickly because that builds momentum. We had to get a lot of things right on the administrative front, which we corrected very quickly. And then a rebrand was huge. One of the things that we differed with the big hospital systems is we believe in direct-to-consumer branding and marketing, whereas that's one part of their marketing, but they have a lot of other arms in their marketing. But that's our main goal. And friends and family. We don't have a big hospital system full of primary care doctors and referral patterns like the big hospitals do. So we have to go direct to the consumer and tell them this is what we do, this is why we're good, and then word of mouth. So that was a huge part of what we were going to do. And as you can see by the branding, I had a 7-month process where I sat down in a room with our marketing team, and we hired a consultant to come in and rebrand us. And part of that discussion was, what do we want to convey to the consumer? The thing that I didn't want to pick a word that had meaning to it. So the main thing was this AVALA doesn't have any meaning. We wanted to build the meaning into the word. Kind of like, Pepsi doesn't have any real meaning. They built that brand. Right. So, we picked the word AVALA. I wanted it to be cutting edge technology in a spa-like environment. And we really, we picked Trust Healthcare again. It wasn't because of Donald Trump. Although, looking back on it, people asked me, Trust Healthcare again, did you steal that? No. We developed that over months and months of going through what we wanted. And I felt like in a time where people stopped trusting their doctor, people stopped trusting the process, pre-authorizations and insurance and premiums are going up and hospital costs, and you're treated like a number in these big hospital systems. So I said, we need to go back to the start, and people need to trust their physicians again. And so that's where the Trust Healthcare again came in. So when we talk to our team, we talk about branding a culture, and that culture involves treating physicians and our staff in a first-class manner, because it all goes down from there. It trickles down to the patients. And you see that with our satisfaction scores. We have employee satisfaction scores of 96, 98% in the last couple of years. You really don't see that in healthcare. our patient scores are through the roof because they're so happy that they're willing to get online and say something about it. Typically, all you hear about is the complaints and the negativity from people, because if people are usually generally satisfied, they don't go out of their way to say something. But if you're so happy that you're going online and saying something about it, then that means a lot to us. So we have so many 5-star reviews, and we really harp on that in our marketing.
Yeah.
And testimonials. People want to hear from other patients. They want to hear their stories, real life issues that they're having. And, the patients come on and say, I was really scared. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, if you think about it, in my accident, I'm a doctor and I'm going through this scared time. And, to be honest with you, I asked my dad, like, Dad, what do I do? And he, it's his son. He didn't really know what to do. And so I'm thinking to myself, if my dad doesn't know and I don't know, what's going to happen to people that have no medical background?
Right.
So that's where all this stems from, is to try to make the experience better, to take the stress out of healthcare.
Okay, so when you consider your branding, right, and it's brilliant.
Thank you.
But it's not just a sign on a building, right? It has to come to life in everything that you do. From when a patient first hears about you, from when they walk in the door. The furnishings. I've read things that you've said about the degree to which the brand has to permeate through every aspect of your business, which is a really high level understanding of branding, which is really cool. I read something where you talked about the art on the walls has to be right.
Yeah. So, what I do in the operating room is, there's not many people that do it. Right. And it takes a lot of training, and I go through a lot of, I'm meticulous in the operating room. So I expect the same with everything we do. If you look at the wall with the wave wall and the technology here and the color schemes, and I want every aspect of the patient when they walk in here to be first class. And we're never going to get to perfection, but that's definitely the goal.
Yeah.
Because we need to learn from our mistakes and correct them. If we don't ask, we're never going to know. Right. So we go into it as, and all my staff knows, in our culture, I don't care who's right or wrong. I just care what's right and how do we get there. And if my staff is not willing to step up and say, hey, I messed up, or this is wrong, and if they're fearful for their job, then we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. It's interesting you use the word culture, and I was going to make the point that, when branding and culture merge, like branding rolls into culture, right? And so culture is how you keep your brand alive inside your building with your employees.
Right.
And so you can define a culture, but what's critical is to manage that culture over a long time. You can have, a new employee come in. How do they? So, how do you manage culture, and how important is that?
So, it's a simple recipe. We get the vision from the top, but we have amazing staff that execute it. Our HR director is so passionate. I knew when we started this, I pulled him from Baton Rouge. He worked at another hospital. I said, you're coming with me. I don't care what it takes, because I knew he's the guy to execute this culture. Our administration is unbelievable. We have our COO is unbelievable. Our CEO is phenomenal. He jumped out of retirement for this opportunity because he knew that what we're building is something special. So we do things like, we have a Christmas party for our staff that's second to none. People look forward to this Christmas party, and we have it for our entire staff and our entire medical staff. And Rock and Doopsie perform live, in the middle of downtown Covington at the Southern Hotel. So it's the talk of the town when it happens. We have a crawfish boil coming up with Travis Mott, and he's going to perform live, and so those are the types of things that we do for our staff that the bigger hospital systems are not able to do, or that they don't do with this same verve that we do.
So I pick up a lot of that on your social media.
Yeah.
So how important is that in your marketing?
Social media is the key nowadays. I mean, people are looking up, they have these Facebook groups and Instagram things that happen, and Twitter, and we're involved in all that very, very heavily. Our marketing team is phenomenal, and they're constantly working those avenues to get the word out, because people really aren't, they listen to the news, but not nearly as much as they used to. Right. So a lot of people get their news from online and from social media. So we have to get the word out, and we have to be players on those markets.
Yeah. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, my theory is a video is worth 1,000,000. And you guys do some really good video content. These testimonials.
Thank you.
Really high quality. That do a good job of painting a picture of how someone with a severe condition, a lot of pain, can go through a procedure and get back to living.
Right. I mean, I put myself in somebody that's sitting at home. And so if you're watching some of our marketing, we try to be very simple, very clean. We don't want to clutter it. We want it to just come across as, hey, this guy's having neck pain. He kind of describes it for a little bit, and then describes the procedure and how they felt afterwards and what it means to them.
Yeah.
And so, because you only have 30 seconds with these commercials. I mean, Of course, if you want to get to the full testimonial, you can go to the website.
Right.
But even that experience, the website, I want it to be very, very easy. Like, okay, if my mom was online, I want her to be able to figure out what we're doing. And so that's kind of the mantra where I started is, is this good enough for my mama? Because trust me, she's going to tell me. She's going to make sure that what I'm doing is first class, and I'm treating people well. So if I can't make her happy, I'm not going to make other people happy.
Well, it's funny you mentioned your mother, because I read somewhere where when you think about what the inside of your offices or hospital are going to look like, whether it's the art on the wall or the furniture, you ask yourself, would my mother like this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I got that from one of my chief residents, and he would say, how would I treat my mama? And this is how I would do it. And she's obviously so proud, and she's always telling her friends and family about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's what drives me, is to make my family proud and to make sure we're taking care of the community.
Another thing I saw when you're talking about your staff and the events, during the recent hurricane, I think I saw on social media you guys had a fuel truck.
So
arranged.
We take every opportunity we can to treat our staff well.
Right.
I mean, just the passion. There were multiple staff members who stayed in the hospital during the hurricane. I mean, our CEO, who had just signed on, by the way, like 2 weeks earlier, stayed for the whole hurricane. It was unbelievable. And so we had key staff members, directors, that stayed here throughout the hurricane. And so when we saw the opportunity to give back, I mean, that was something really small, but people needed fuel. So we had the opportunity to give our staff fuel so that they could survive. We were happy to do it.
Well, there was a supply issue, I believe, and getting fuel, and but it again through social media,
we got the word out.
Yeah, it kind of resonated with how you guys operated.
I'm really happy that you're getting all this, because that means it's working.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I know you're very adept at all that.
Yeah, it's absolutely working. Yeah. Let's take another quick break. I want to get back to your growth story, and there's a lot to tell there, and we'll pick that up on the other side. We would like to thank Modus for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Who is Modus? Modus is a facility services company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry across the United States. What do? They like to say they take it from the conveyor to the dock door. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're building the pick stations with the cable management. They're installing guardrails and bollards. They're putting down floor marking. They're putting up aerial signage. These guys build fencing systems, shelving systems, and racking systems. They also do rack recovery for when there's rack failures. They also install dock levelers and dock doors. Modus also installs ASRS systems, which is automated storage and retrieval systems, as well as other robotics projects. They've worked for the largest e-commerce retailers in the world, and they can work for you. If you need to find Modus, you can reach them online at modusmoves.com. And we are back with Dr. Samer Shamieh. I wanted to pick back up, Doc, on the growth of your business. Kind of got off on some branding and marketing and culture stuff. And so where we last left the story, you're in the hospital. You're in the process of turning around, but there's a whole bunch of growth throughout your business that's happened since then. Kind of walk us through what was next.
So we basically quintupled our revenue in the past 4 to 5 years, and a lot of that is we started having different arms of growth. It made sense for us to start our own imaging center because when patients are in the hospital, let's say something happens and you need a chest x-ray or you need a CT scan or an MRI. We have all of that in-house for our inpatients, but also for outpatients. And so we started marketing and branding that. And it's very convenient for our physicians to have imaging on site. Another thing is physical therapy.
Well, let's hold on the imaging because I've built a few MRI clinics in my day, and just the construction side of it's expensive.
Very expensive.
The equipment is a whole nother story.
Expensive.
Right.
And the maintenance and the service is extremely expensive because these things are extremely expensive, the parts.
Yeah.
And then right now, in the middle of this supply chain shortage, sometimes it's a disaster.
So you're opening this new service, this imaging service, but tied with that is these big dollars that we're talking about. But you're doing your financial decision based on how much business you can feed that, and it's all based on doing your imaging in-house. You're not third-party imaging, are you?
Right. So, you have to pay for the radiologist to do the reads as well. So in our proformas, we do proformas and we say, well, this is how much this insurance company is paying us. This is how much Medicare is going to pay us. And this is how many patients we think can go through the doors and how many studies we can do.
Right.
So we just, got to calculate up the rent and utilities and the leases and the service agreements and the radiology agreement. And then we come up with that pro forma. But even if we broke even on imaging, let's just say we broke even.
Right.
It's still a service that we wanted to provide to this community and to our patients because it makes the whole operation much more efficient. Yeah. And again, we're able to control the quality of care. That's the number one thing across the board, is that when I have my stamp on it, when AVALA has its stamp on it, it's going to be first class.
Right. So every part of the process that you can control that can make that AVALA experience more efficient is worth that investment.
Exactly. I mean, a perfect example is physical therapy. Right. When these guys, the orthopedic surgeons, they use our robot to do a total knee replacement. Well, you can get a perfect result from the operating room and then have a bad physical therapy experience, and you don't get the full range of motion of your knee and have a terrible overall experience. Right. So you have to work hand in hand with our therapists to make sure that the post-operative protocols are followed, and so that the patient will have the ultimate optimal result. So you can do this perfect surgery, and they have a terrible post-operative follow-up, and you have a terrible result. So That's the last thing we want, because they're going to go back to their surgeon and say, hey, this isn't what I bargained for.
Right. And then you have AVALA Ortho, right? Or is that where you're doing the hand?
So we started our own physician network, the AVALA Physician Network, or we call it the APN, where we started having physicians who are frustrated on the outside with the burden of running a practice. I mean, you have insurance companies breathing down your neck. You have the liability of taking care of patients, the risks of patient care. You have staffing issues. You have, all these issues of running a business. People don't want to do that anymore. So they're looking for alternatives. Do I go with a big hospital system and become employed and basically run into this bureaucracy and being told what to do? Or do we stay independent and they're going to tell themselves what they want to do? But there's a lot of risk. So we feel like we're right in the middle, right, where we can provide all of these services of the administrative burden, but still allow them to be free and operate like they would as an independent physician. So that's a big reason why Disc of Louisiana is going into this network, where we have pain doctors, orthopedics, hand surgeons, general surgeons, and now we're going to be the spine surgeons, or the first of hopefully many spine surgeons, where we still feel like we're going to operate on our own, still call the shots, but take that administrative burden away. And there's a lot to be said for scale. When you put all the insurance premiums under one roof, we're able to then show insurance companies that we can provide quality of care that others cannot. And one of the main things that our goals is a center of excellence for orthopedics, a center of excellence for spine surgery, to where people will start to drive patient care to us.
So in the AVALA Physicians Network, is it a big part of that where the physicians are utilizing the AVALA hospital?
Right.
I mean, is that the sole purpose?
No, that's not the sole purpose. The sole purpose is quality of care. I mean, if you'll hear me say that every single time, that just the overall culture of how we treat patients, and it's much easier for us to correct problems when they're under one roof, so we don't keep running into the same problems. I mean, one example is last week. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but last week we got our new electronic medical record system rollout, which is kind of a pain in the backside, but eventually it's going to be amazing, because the front desk of these offices are now talking to the hospital without picking up the phone. They're going through the electronic medical record system. So things don't get lost. I can see notes from another doctor's office through my system. I can see the imaging reports from the imaging center through the system. So, it's going all over the country, but we really bought into it.
Yeah, and so you said this, and a little slow to pick up on it, but in essence, you're doing all the back of house operations for these physicians, and you're at the same time creating this culture, the AVALA culture, through the whole network.
Right. I mean, it's down to the scrubs, down to what people wear, how do you greet people when they come in. We want to reduce the amount of paperwork. If you go to a doctor's office, you're sitting there for 30 minutes doing paperwork. Well, you don't have to do that with this system, because if you see me and I send you to another doctor, let's say that doctor is in the network, you don't have to repeat the financial information. You just have to confirm it. Things like that.
Yeah.
Just makes your experience so much better.
So when I go on your website, I see so many different specialists that are in the network, not employees of AVALA Hospital, but they're in the network. I mean, they're
credentialed at the hospital. So I think there's like 100 doctors that can come here and operate here, and they're credentialed at the hospital just like any other hospital. and so they do amazing work. I mean, we want to partner with amazing physicians.
And you said earlier you have how many operating rooms?
We have 8 operating rooms and 4 procedure rooms.
Okay.
And 21 inpatient beds.
And 21 inpatient beds. And so you're essentially scheduling, for the 100 doctors where they can use these rooms, and then you're billing the insurance company as a hospital.
Right. And then the other doctors, they'll bill the professional fees on their own.
So how do you build that network? I mean, how do you talk an ophthalmologist into joining the network?
So we basically say we're going to build you a nest or a home to where we try to take the stress away from you as a physician. And when I wake up in the morning, I woke up at 5:30 this morning, I'm automatically thinking of my patient and the surgery that I have and my day. It's sometimes very frustrating for a physician to go to a hospital where they have no engagement because maybe a piece of equipment is not right. Maybe the patient didn't get to the hospital on time, so there's a delay. Maybe the staff in the room is not engaged and ready to work that day. So all of these things start to build frustration for the surgeon throughout the day, and then that starts to creep into your mind during the surgery. Like, man, a lot of negativity surrounds this care.
Yeah.
And if you can get rid of all that stress and negativity, then the doctor is only focused on treating the patient and doing the surgery. And that's what we want to do. And we want to get them home to their family or to whatever they have to do in a quicker, more efficient manner. One of the key things is turnover. So a doctor will most of the time book multiple cases in a day. Let's say an eye doctor, ophthalmologist, they'll have 15 cataract surgeries in a day. Well, if the turnover time is 5 minutes quicker here than it is somewhere else, then just, by the book, it's going to be 75 minutes quicker here than somewhere else. So that's 75 minutes where they could be at home doing whatever, eating dinner, seeing their little baby. I just showed you I have a 10-month-old, my first baby, my parents' first granddaughter. So it's extremely important for me to get home and have this work-life balance that really my wife allows me to have, and AVALA allows me to have.
Yeah. So COVID, you've been building this network in the teeth of COVID, right?
Right.
Which seems to... with the challenges that everyone's faced with COVID, with staffing, employees, people want to work remotely, et cetera, I can see where the physicians that are joining the network can say, this is a relief. They'll take away my back of house operations and billing and all that. I don't have to worry about that part of my business anymore, right? But on your hand, you're taking all that work and you're still in this COVID environment. How are you dealing with those challenges?
So if you talk to any hospital administrator, the number one problem right now is staffing. If you look at, I was just reading Becker's review. It's a hospital-based or a healthcare-based magazine or journal. It's like the Wall Street Journal of healthcare. Everyone's talking about staffing shortages and supply chain shortages. And so that is the key right now, is how do we retain our staff and how do we get new staff? And so if you offer something to new staff, how do you not upset your old staff? Because they've been the ones that have been loyal and they've been there the whole time. So there's lots of things that we've been doing. Number one is culture and just selling our culture.
Right.
We have great brand ambassadors throughout the hospital. Number two, we've tried to get on to signing bonuses, things like that throughout the facility. We've had to really stay competitive with our salaries. And, in a time of inflation, in a time of COVID, people wanting to stay at home, a lot of people retired early, didn't want to work, especially in healthcare.
Right.
everybody, the tip of everybody's tongue is burnout.
Right.
Physician burnout, staff burnout. They're just like, man, I'm going to go do something else. So we've got to be on the forefront of that to see it and to get out ahead of it. Benefits packages are extremely important these days. Flexibility with scheduling. One of our staff wanted to work 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week. If we're rigid, then we may have lost that employee. So those sorts of things. And then word of mouth. I think our reputation is that we work hard. I mean, our staff works hard here. I want to give them credit. They're amazing. But they get rewarded as well. So this isn't a place where you just kind of come to work and put up your feet and you stay here. I mean, we're going to work throughout the day, and then we're going to play hard as well.
Yeah. So employee count, how has that increased over the years? When you look across the system, DISC,
right? We've probably,
PT.
I would say we've at least doubled in size. I think we have 180 full-time employees or 150, and then we have a lot of PRNs. As needed, they come and they go, fill in the gaps. So I think it was definitely less than 100 when we started, and there was quite a bit of turnover. People didn't buy into the culture. When we came here, they hadn't had a raise in 8 or 9 years.
Oh my
and
goodness.
The staff stayed. I mean, they were very loyal. They're proud of now wearing their scrubs out and things like that. People go up to the staff all the time. You work for AVALA? Oh, that's amazing. I see the commercials.
Yeah.
I see the branding. What do you do? I mean, so for the first 2 years, the biggest hurdle was, getting people to say AVALA correctly. There was AVALA, AVALA. So we thought about doing like a commercial or a social media thing. We'll say this word, how do you say that? It's AVALA, almost like you're at a spa, like, AVALA, So we had to teach our staff about the branding so that they could repeat the branding and the culture and the mission statement, things like that.
Now, I would have guessed that I saw 100 employees just as I walked from the reception area up to the third floor here.
Right. I mean, there's inpatient nurses, there's the rehab people, there's the administration, the front desk, the billers and collectors, our actual administrators, physicians, imaging center. I mean, there's just so many, pre-op nurses, PACU nurses, OR staff. I mean, there's a lot of OR staff, materials, facilities. I mean, we have our own facilities director, our own IT director. So, of course, HR, so there's so many different departments. We try to keep them lean because we are we're not one of the big hospital nonprofit systems. I mean, we pay a lot of taxes, right, and we're proud to pay them for our community, and we give a lot back to our community as well. So we have to, be careful about how we spend money.
Well, you grow your business like you see some big hospitals do that are nonprofit, and so what is the next? What's the next growth step for AVALA?
So definitely more facilities. We're not going to stop here. A lot of the branding we do are in similar markets. On the North Shore, we have clinics in Slidell and Hammond, but I think either through build-outs or acquisitions, our next plan is to have facilities in all the markets around the lake, especially the South Shore, because our marketing is already going there, and I don't feel like we're able to capitalize on it yet. We could basically have the same marketing spend, but be able to capitalize on those things in those areas and provide quality of care in all of those areas. I mean, that's really the ultimate goal, is to bring the AVALA brand, the AVALA culture to different areas so they don't have to travel. I mean, but right now, we have patients traveling from Mississippi, from Lake Charles, from Homa here for surgery and for imaging. I get a lot of phone calls from Lake Charles, and they typically going to Houston or something like that for care. That's what we're doing. That's kind of the broad answer, but specifically we want to build our primary care network to be able to treat patients with primary care doctors, and to build urgent care facilities throughout the network, so where patients can come in, see our doctors, and get treated very well. We've partnered with Tulane on cancer services, which is a whole nother branch, a whole nother arm of treating cancer patients. So that's going to be an amazing partnership here coming soon.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So it's a whole nother realm where we're going to have to soften our brand. That's what we're working on right now. This is a very cutting edge, sharp, masculine branding, really. So we're going to have to bring in more feminine things to the cancer world.
Interesting. Very interesting. I didn't want to leave this conversation without mentioning your father. He's always impressed me with the philanthropic work that he does. He's a neurologist, you mentioned.
He's a neurologist, yes.
But he travels overseas and provides care. Tell us a little bit about what he does there.
So he was a neurologist, or he still is a neurologist. He still works hard for 42 years now in Lake Charles. And I would see patients, come into his office and bring pecans or shrimp or all this stuff, woodwork, because they couldn't pay, or they paid, and they was on top of that, they loved my dad. And I saw that passion for patient care that he had and that they had for him. And so every year, multiple times a year, he'll go back to, we're Palestinian Christians. He would go back to Jerusalem and Ramallah, which is our hometown. And he actually established his own wing of neurology at one of the local hospitals. And he trained their staff on how to see patients and how to send EEGs over. And he has brought EMG machines and all that stuff over there, donated it to the hospital. And he does that multiple times a year with Physicians for Peace. And so he just does, all kinds of missionary work there, and he's an amazing person in that community. I mean, people come up to him all the time, and they say, Dr. Fayez, Dr. Fayez, and they know me as the son of Dr. Fayez. So it was really I'm very proud of that I go back, and that's what they call me. I'm the son of Dr. Fayez. So he, the accolades are never ending for him over there.
Well, I just love your father. He's just
Thank you.
He's just a beautiful man, and your mother as well.
They're both one of a kind. For sure.
They absolutely are, and it's no surprise that they've created a wonderful person yourself. And
I appreciate it.
Look, I appreciate you taking the time, as busy as you are, to share your story with us. It is unbelievable what you have done and what you continue to do, and I know you'll just have unlimited success in the future. So
I always appreciate your support. I mean, you were very supportive of us always, and you've kept up with me, and we've had some great times together in New York at the
ringing the bell.
Ringing the bell, yeah, that was awesome. And so it was my privilege to present to the Business First board. I mean, we've always been big supporters of the bank and of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great relationship. Doc, we appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I just love that conversation with Dr. Shamieh. There's some steps along the way that are very fascinating to me. When he was a kid and walked around the hospital and learned about his father's passion for patient care, wearing his lab jacket, his ACL surgery, where that pointed him in the direction for ortho, his accident that somehow he survived, where he learned about what he wanted a hospital to be, and then his residency or his fellowship in Arizona, where he's learning minimally invasive spine procedures, and he had to learn to market himself because there was so much competition out there, and he brought all that back to Louisiana, and all those things came together to play a role and him building this incredible business AVALA Health. So we really appreciate the time that Dr. Shamieh took to spend with us. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.